побачив аж до дна.
Обними, если против войны.
Hug me if you are against the war, reads this TikTok post from Moscow on the first day of the invasion. Though TikTok, which is Chinese-owned, has now blocked any new Russian content after the Kremlin outlawed what it calls fake news. For his own safety, we've also blurred the identity of this influencer, who has since deleted his TikTok post.
Oh, good. No one will ever know who the influencer was if you blurred his face. You know, that made a very popular viral TikTok that literally led the Russian government to actually, you know, ban TikTok.
I want to deliver one thing to you. None of people I personally talked to, literally none of my friends and none of people I personally talked to supported today's events. Every single person I know is against the violence and against the crime which is happening right now.
Many Russian postings aimed against the Ukrainian government appeared to come from a shared script.
За время войны погибли сотни невинных детей, и на данный момент обстрел мирных жителей продолжается. Мы не хотим установки новых мемориалов и не можем допустить гибели невинных детей.
Russian school teachers have been issued with this new guidance on what to tell their teenage pupils about the so-called nightmare of genocide in Ukraine, which is that the war is not a war, but a special peacekeeping operation to, quotes, denazify the country.
We want to see demilitarized Ukraine. We want to see Ukraine free from Nazi ideology and Nazi elements.
Are Russians being persuaded by state propaganda?
Now that the authoritarian government has flipped a switch and become totalitarian overnight.
Right always talks about Castro and Soviet leaders, but never talks about dictators like Augusto Pinochet, Fulgencio Batista, Ferdinand Marcos, who were all U.S.-backed. Well, they did talk about it when it actually mattered, and more importantly than talking about it, they actually offered full-blown material support to those leaders. You can try to erase that history, but what you can't erase is, of course, the Wall Street Journal editorial board and its full-throated defense of Pinochet's regime, which, of course, they also continued when Jair Bolsonaro became the leader of Brazil. So, you know, they are always on the wrong side of history, so it doesn't matter.
It makes polling even more difficult. So it's hard to tell.
Julia Ioffe is a psychopath and is literally friends with Richard Spencer. I do not give a fuck about her point of view on Russia's unjustifiable actions. It's like all the biggest dumbasses are fucking gaining prominence as a consequence of this shit. My most consistent fucking point of view on this shit is that I despise Nazis no matter where they are, no matter who they are, no matter who they're backing.
It makes polling even more difficult. So it's hard to tell. But I would guess that it would be fairly effective. I have a friend whose mother is from a Siberian village, small Siberian village, and the first coffin came home last week. But the young man's parents said they're not going to talk about it because they're afraid of getting a 15-year sentence for spreading fake news, you know, what is considered fake news about this.
Every war has its propaganda symbols, and for the Russians it's the letter Z, which first appeared on military vehicles and was then adopted by politicians, including Maria Butina, here urging the Russian army to keep going.
Wait. Oh my God! Maria Butina! What? Yo!
Vehicles and was then adopted by politicians, including Maria Butina, here urging the Russian army to...
Bro, Maria Butina, all I'm saying is she's thrown it back harder for the Republican Party than... I don't want to make a comparison. She's a Russian spy who famously was able to infiltrate a lot of Republican circles and was like a part of the NRA as a lobbyist, and was incredibly effective at being a spy. She literally was like, bro, Julia Ioffe is a Jew. I don't care, dude. What the fuck? I don't care. Literally as a photo with Richard Spencer. What the fuck are you talking about, dude? I hate this fucking argument where it's like always like, oh, this person is Jewish, so like they've never collaborated with fucking fascists. Oh, okay, got it, dude. I got it. Okay, never mind. I showed you that like the fucking the Israeli businessman, one of the biggest like business oligarchs in Israel, directly was funding the right sector. Bibi Netanyahu is a Holocaust revisionist. Like, shut the fuck up. You say that about Zelensky? No, I always say Zelensky being Jewish has nothing to do with whether or not he's a fucking Nazi or not. He's just not a Nazi. Every single time people bring up Zelensky being Jewish, and that's why it somehow absolves him from, potentially being a Nazi, I tell you all the fucking time that that's not enough. Yeah, she had the guac 5000, okay? Maria Butina, good for her.
Keep going.
Работайте, братья. Мы с вами навсегда.
The Russian gymnast Ivan Kuliak even wore it on his leotard while standing on a podium next to his victorious Ukrainian rival. Russia's defense ministry says the Z stands for victory, celebrated here in Siberia with patriotic pop, from where the true horror of war seems quite deliberately a very long way off.
Jonathan Rugman with that report about the situation inside Russia. Well, earlier I spoke to the former Prime Minister Gordon Brown. He's called for a special international tribunal to be set up to try Vladimir Putin over Russia's aggression. I asked him to explain why.
The Ukraine government has now asked us to do it. They're supporting it. Support is building up in the Baltic states and across Europe. The Foreign Secretary has announced today she's looking at this proposal. And what it does is it fills a gap in international law. At the moment, we could not try President Putin and his coterie for crimes of aggression.
Guys, you don't get it. If they want to try Vladimir Putin in an international criminal court, what's to stop him from passing a law in the Duma that dictates that then Russia would be able to nuke The Hague? You know what I mean? And I mean, obviously, that would be fucking disgusting, right? If a country were to literally show and demonstrate how little they give a fuck about international law. I mean, that sounds ridiculous. No country has done that in the year 2002 in the United States of America.
The act of invading Ukraine and continuing to fight a war within Ukraine. The International Criminal Court can look at war crimes and crimes against humanity and genocide, but the first crime, the crime of aggression, does need to be focused upon, and that's what a special tribunal would do.
Until a few weeks ago, the idea of a nuclear strike, a nuclear war between the superpowers seemed completely off the reservation, a madcap stuff. No one talked about it. He has now raised that issue, and however unlikely it still is, without alarming the British public or anyone else for that matter, do you think we should be having a more open and frank discussion about this possibility?
I know it's not right to believe President Putin, but the
fuck is madcap stuff.
Statement of the government is that they would only use nuclear weapons in the event of being under attack as a country or in the event of the existence of the very country being put in jeopardy. Now, none of these conditions apply to any justification for using nuclear weapons in this situation. And I do believe that there are more sensible people than President Putin at the center of the Russian government. And it would be difficult for him to pull the trigger as if on his own. He would be prevented from doing so.
So you obviously met Vladimir Putin when you were Prime Minister, perhaps also as Chancellor of the Exchequer, as did Tony Blair. What was he like?
Well, President Putin only understands one thing, strength. The first time I met him, we were talking about oil, and the same issue arose. He said, we will sell to the East. We don't need to sell to the West. And unless you meet our terms, we're not going to sell oil and gas to you. And of course, he did continue to sell oil and gas to us, but he was threatening us. And of course, I had to deal with Putin after the Litvinenko assassination. And we knew that Putin was planning other assassinations in Britain. We knew that he was directing them personally. And we knew unless he understood that we would fight back on these things, expelling diplomats,
As an Irishman, don't mind if I laugh at Englishmen talking about war crime tribunals for an invasion, act of occupation, resettlement. What do you mean? What? They would never do that, dude. You're doing whataboutism. Well, he's Scottish, but in general, English people talking about this is still fucking hilarious.
Expelling the people who were the spies, tracking those people who were coming into the country to undertake these crimes, and giving security to the people who were at risk. And that happened for years afterwards. And I suppose
except for Boris Johnson, who was Ottoman, and Ottomans famously never invaded.
Our guard had dropped by the time the Salisbury poisonings happened. So he only understands one thing, and that is strength.
But if he only understands strength, and if that was obvious to you at the time, why did you and Tony Blair go out of your way to court both him and the rich oligarchs around him?
I didn't court any oligarchs. I've got no interest in them and no influence.
You expanded the visa scheme that allowed them to come to the UK.
I'm sorry, Matt. The Tier 1 visa scheme was not to bring oligarchs to the United Kingdom to use laundered money.
Yeah, I just wondered if the scrutiny was there to look into the origins of their money.
Well, look, if it had ever been brought to my attention when I was Prime Minister, I would have taken action. And I do believe that Keir Starmer is absolutely right to say that the government has been
Yeah, it's just, it never was brought to his attention.
Far too slow to deal with this issue in the last few years, and particularly even in the last few weeks.
First things first, you need a UK registered shell company. If you own your newfound wealth via a shell company, rather than in your own name, no one's going to know it's yours. 810,316 companies were created in the UK last year. Each one popping into life complete with limited liability, legal protections, property rights, and all the rest of it. So where are all these companies? Well, 62,259 of them are in this one building, Kemp House in the City Road. Of course, they're not actually physically present here, water coolers and employees and printers and the like. They're just paying to say this is their address instead of their real address. Look, it's stupidly easy. I'll do it for you. Type any old nonsense in the box. No one checks if it's accurate or not. Click, done. You'll have the documents in 2 days' time. You can register your company to Bart Simpson if you like, because nobody checks. Now, it doesn't mean every company registered in the UK is up to no good. Many aren't. Lots of people have legitimate reasons for doing it, but many don't. Boris Johnson has just promised to do something about this, but politicians have promised this before. Frankly, I won't believe him until it's done. Okay, let's see what happens next. So, Companies House lets you...
Absolutely zero people will understand what the fuck's going on here if it's just like driving by them. You know what I mean? No one's gonna be like, oh shit, limey bloke. This fucking guy, he's speaking the truth, bruv. I was just driving by in my fucking vehicle. All right, and now I've learned more about fucking drop pace. Do they try harder? Yeah.
Own your new company offshore, so you can create a company in, say, the Seychelles, and use that company to own your British company. And that means nobody will know that you own it. Of course, you're supposed to tell Companies House the identity of the real owner, but no one cares if you do or not. Which is good news, because you're not going to tell them, and you're going to use your company to spend a lot of stolen money. Now, this is a critical cog in the money laundering machine. Johnson says he's introducing a new law to change that, but even if he's serious, it will take a year for it to be effective. It took the invasion of a sovereign European nation for him to even contemplate this simple step.
I wonder why, dude, because they fucking own London, bruv. It's not just Vladimir Putin either. Oligarchs from every nation own every fucking cosmopolitan city. Every single one. And they fund the Tories too. And they fund both sides. They don't just like fund one side. Like you think the Democratic Party, or rather, okay, this is capitalism. We are talking about a bourgeois state. Their number one goal is to protect the interests of capital. And if you are a capitalist and you have a lot of capital, it doesn't matter what nation state you're from. It doesn't matter. You own a fuckload of real estate. And now when you are defending the interests of real estate as a Tory, rather, okay, you're still fundamentally defending those guys as well.
Meanwhile, for 2 decades, Putin's cronies have been allowed to hide their wealth here. Okay, so you've created an identity, a shell company you can use to hide the money that Putin let you steal from his political opponent's company. You gave him half the loot, which he'll use to keep a firm grip on the reins of power. And fortunately, he paid you your billion share in Cyprus, which is where all the Russian trades tend to get made.
Yeah, I mean, dude, look, wealth of the top 100 Russian oligarchs combined is 567 billion. Wealth of Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Bill Gates combined, 594 billion. Lucky for us, our billionaires are the good guys, though, right? Exactly. It's just, no, it's not like that. It's not like that. You don't understand, guys. Ours are not oligarchs. It's only an oligarch if he's a billionaire in Russia. It's only an oligarch if he's a billionaire in fucking, you know, in a country that's not America or fucking, you know, the UK.
So now we need someone to move it from there to here. But who's going to do that? Relax. It's fine. This is London. This is the London office of Deutsche Bank. They moved billions for Russian oligarchs. And this is HSBC. These guys moved hundreds of millions of dollars for the Sinaloa cartel. Trust me, those were very bad people. And their money was not
20 months at HasanAbi.
British-based banks are notorious for shifting dirty cash. Sometimes they get busted, they get fined a tiny percentage of their profits, and everyone moves on. Now, Johnson could have properly funded the National Crime Agency so they could investigate and stop this, but he didn't. Okay, back to...
Send this after. We'll look at this after.
$1 million. We've stolen it. We've hidden it. We've moved it. Now we need to spend it. This is Harrods, and this is Zamira Hajieva. She's the wife of the former chairman of the International Bank of Azerbaijan. And between 2006 and 2016, she used 54 different credit cards to spend £16.3 million at Harrods. Now, she ended up being the subject of an unexplained wealth order by the National Crime Agency, but that made her very much the exception. That's because our investigative agencies are too underfunded, dispirited, and wound down to do anything about it. Now, Johnson could have announced that our enforcement agencies will be as generously funded as the lawyers employed by oligarchs to protect them. You can't fight grand corruption on the cheap. But he hasn't done so. Instead, he just announced the creation of a new kleptocracy unit within the National Crime Agency, as if changing the sign on the door is going to scare the oligarchs away. We should be spending what it takes to drive kleptocratic cash out of this country. Instead, too often it's been no questions asked. But what if questions are asked about your stolen $1 billion? You're going to need to put a stop to that, but more good news, because Britain has the most stringent libel laws in the world, or some of them anyway. So you might want to throw some of your cash at one of the London law firms which are more than happy to take ill-gotten loot. Then you can drag any inconvenient authors and journalists here to the High Court, where billionaires silence the people asking awkward questions.
Yeah, UK libel laws are no fucking joke, dude. They are way more fucking aggro than American libel laws. Like America, that is one thing that is good with the US, is that like defamation suits, you have to be like Peter Thiel using like Hulk Hogan's legitimate gripes with Gawker to like actually take down a fucking paper. UK does not have the same free speech protections that America does, and it is not good. It is actually not good, because rich people straight up own, they just straight up own whatever the fuck they want, whoever the fuck they want to own. Pink Steel Toast, thank you for the 5 gifted subs.
Okay, things are going well. But what you really need now is property. Somewhere in London where you can turn a slice of your stolen haul into bricks and mortar. That way, given UK property laws, it's going to be almost impossible for the victims of your crimes to ever get their hands on your money. Welcome to Belgravia. This is one of the most expensive postcodes on planet Earth, and the good news is that for decades, Britain hasn't just let shell companies buy houses here, it has let other countries' shell companies own property without ever having to say who the people behind them are. Some 87,000 properties in England and Wales are owned via offshore companies, which prevents us seeing who their true owners are, or if they were bought with criminal money. UK property worth £1.5 billion has been bought by Russians with links to the Kremlin or accused of corruption. Nearly £430 million of the property is in Westminster, in London, and more than half is held by companies in Britain's overseas territories and crown dependencies. Look at this place. It would have cost upwards of £10 million. Who owns it? No idea, because it was bought by a company registered in the British Virgin Islands. Now, 3 doors down that way, it's registered in Panama. 3 doors that way is in the Isle of Man. Opposite this place.
A lot of the reason why the rich oligarchs are not going to suffer as a consequence of these sanctions, whereas the regular Russian citizens are, is because of this. When you try to slap like targeted sanctions on fucking oligarchs or whatever, but then they're all encompassing, all you are doing is just hurting fucking the average citizen, like the average Russian person who has no say in what the fuck happens. Part of the reason why Americans don't even feel the need to park their assets in other countries is because America operates in a similar capacity too, where it's just like, if you have a financialized economy, if your most important sectors are about, you know, moving numbers around, you're going to have to create tax havens for foreign capital in this way. The current video is Putin, oligarchs, and the London Laundromat, led by donkeys, made this video.
The British Virgin Islands again, and next door to that, Guernsey. I could keep going round and round and round the streets of London, thousands of properties where we don't know if they were bought with clean or dirty money. We've let the criminals do it. Worse than that, we've flung open the doors and invited them in. If they couldn't have laundered their money here, there'd have been significantly fewer incentives for them to steal it in the first place. And Putin's personal coffers would have been directly hit. The road from...
This is why I said when we're talking about like oligarchs and hurting oligarchs, I was like, that mean they're gonna just like expropriate their land that they own in all fucking major cities, like all of them. A shitload of apartments would directly be seized by the government, which is cool. I mean, I'm fucking super on board with that, you know? Incredibly on board with that. Anything short of that is just like, you're just hurting random Russian citizens who have no say in what happens in the Russian government. Like when the top of the hour comes and I run a 60-second ad break, I'm hurting the random people who don't have the $5 a month subscription to be able to no longer see the ads and have an ad-free broadcasting experience.
Moscow to Kiev passes through Belgravia. For decades, the London Laundromat has helped keep Putin in power. It is one of the most spectacular British policy failures of the post-World War II era. Only a new war has forced our politicians to act, but the record thus far of those same politicians has been one of cowardice and complicity. Do not take them at their word. The stakes are too high. We are talking about the long-term security of our nation and the future of democracy.
By the way, as Bradley points out, this is not a policy failure, policy success. The goal of the bourgeois capitalist Western liberal democracy is not to punish people like this. It's literally designed so you can do this. That's the whole purpose of this.
It is time for real action.
Anyway, this was a wonderful video. Great video. Comparing the Russia sanctions. A cross-section of countries have sanctioned hundreds of entities so far. EU with 490, Canada with 413. I mean, this doesn't really number of entities sanctioned. Like, what does that even mean? It could be like 400 small things, but one big thing. You know what I mean? This is not a great. It's just to say, like, you know, that. Like, I don't know. I don't know what this means. I genuinely don't know how to interpret this. Because, like, there's people who are like, yeah, you can't, you know, we're not allowing your fucking cats to, we're not allowing, like, Russian cats to participate in a competition. Like, okay, sick. But I mean, like, are you going to punish businesses? Are you actually going to try to, I don't know, sanction wealthy oligarchs, like, straight up, and their assets, seize their assets? That would be sick. That would be cool. Yeah, I know the on the ground video, I think, has, like, some TOS in it. And so does this video, apparently. This one. I don't know where it was. I think it's like in a bunch of different. They're hoping it ferments a revolution among the Hermitage's feline guard. Yeah. That's exactly.
Do you think we now live in a new Europe, a new world of almost permanent insecurity as a result of Russia?
The hopes of 1990 that the war between East and West is over, that is gone. We're now dealing with a president who wants to use force rather than diplomacy, who wants to, if you like, bypass any international institution that would promote the rule of law, and of course who is prepared to go to any lengths, including threatening with nuclear power stations and potentially radiation from them, people that he wants to rule over. But we must try to avoid the continuing bloodshed that is taking place.
It was between him and Tony Blair that the oligarchs were able to invest in Britain. Labor screwed us in this country and fucked us all in the R's. Oh yeah, dude. Tony Blair, who of course famously upheld all of the values of labor. Classic. You know, definitely not a deviation from the history of the Labor Party. Whereas, of course, conservatives and Lib Dems, I mean, they never would. So that's good that you have that take.
Gordon Brown.
Unless you're like a fucking weirdo Green Party guy, which is hilarious, but.
Thank you very much.
So yeah, we covered the Z thing.